Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to note a historic moment in this hearing when Senator Barrasso said, quote, "We can't tackle climate change alone." I couldn't agree with him more. I hope that he'll urge the President to rejoin the Paris Climate Accords, which is the only ongoing international effort to deal with this issue. A molecule of greenhouse gas which comes from the United States causes as much climate problem as one that comes from China or India or anywhere else in the world. So I'm going to speak to Senator Barrasso afterwards. I'm delighted he's taken an interest in this and hope we can get back into our area of global leadership and join the other 197 signatories to the Paris Accords. Mr. Briette, everybody's trying to claim you today. As you know, if your ancestors had gone slightly west instead of south in 1756, you would be a Mainer.
I would be.
Substantial population of Acadians in northern Maine, and we love them, and so I know how to pronounce your name because there are many people of similar extraction in the northern part of our state. First, I don't think there's much more important than what you're doing, what your department does, than research. And we talked a lot about energy independence and the fracking revolution, which, as you know, was largely supported by research funds from the Department of Energy.
That's correct.
And so I just want to hear you reassure me that your commitment will be to strong and vigorous and forward-looking research, whether it's in the national labs or throughout the department, ARPA-E. These are very important in the national interest, in my view.
You have my commitment on that, Senator. One of the things that I've noticed, and one of the things I would like to work with this committee on, as well as the other committees in Congress, is to move some of the research that we're currently doing perhaps more to the basic side of the equation, more basic science. We have a tremendous organization in the Office of Science within our department, and I'd like to see the next generation, if you will, of some of the renewable technologies that we're, beginning as Americans to take for granted. I mean, we talked about this in your office, and thank you, sir, for taking the time to meet with me. We're looking for the next generation of solar panels. We're looking for the next generation of wind technology.
And storage.
And storage. And we want to think about these things in perhaps a slightly different way. As we talked about in your office with regard to battery storage, for instance, we've long thought about battery storage as simply filling a gap. If the sun doesn't shine, cover the 4 hours while the clouds are out. If the wind stops blowing, cover the 2 hours that the wind's not blowing. We ought to be thinking about battery storage perhaps in a more broad context. And what I mean by that is, perhaps batteries are important for resilience, not only as a backup for renewable energy, but a backup for fossil fuels as well.
Totally agree. It's a national security issue, and it's also a completely changed world in terms of the use of renewables. I'm going to Oak Ridge in 2 weeks, as a matter of fact, with Senator Alexander. Oak Ridge has a relationship with the University of Maine that's very beneficial to both sides, and I urge you to support that kind of hub-and-spoke relationship. The national labs are such
Absolutely. It's a very exciting project that we have with the University of Maine on additive manufacturing. We're very, very excited about that program, and I think you will see that expand.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. A couple of substantive questions. A lot of talk about LNG exports, which have a lot of positive benefits in terms of American economy and also our neighbors and friends having a cleaner source of energy. My concern is if LNG exports rise to some critical level, and I don't know what that level is, it will start to have a negative effect, or I guess a positive effect, make prices higher domestically.
Depends on what part of the business you're in, I suppose.
That's exactly right, and I'm in the consuming business in New England. The low price of natural gas here is one of our competitive advantages worldwide. I would hate to see us lose that by exporting to the point where it drives our domestic prices up. This happened in Australia. This isn't an abstract concern. Mm-hmm. Is this something that you have some interest and concern about?
Yes, we monitor it very closely, as a matter of fact. I'm aware that there are, I think, 4 or perhaps 5 studies that have been done. The latest one was done by NERA, N-E-R-A, and I've forgotten what the acronym stands for off the top of my head. But, that study shows that, the increased production in the United States has not yet had a dramatic impact on price, and I think that's borne out by the market prices.
You mean the new production of LNG, you're saying?
The new production, as well as the expanded export capacities that have developed over the course of the last 4 to 5 years.
I would agree with that study, but I just want to keep an eye on it, because once you build $100 billion worth of export capacity and you start exporting and then you say, uh-oh, we've doubled our domestic prices, it's too late. I just think this is something that should be carefully weighed because of the effects on the rest of the U.S. economy.
Yes, sir. Understood. And we do monitor very closely. And I will work closely with the EIA and others who track these types of things for us in the department.
And I'm out of time, but I'm going to give you a question for the record on my concern is about the methane associated with the extraction of natural gas. Methane is 84 times as potent as natural gas in terms of a greenhouse gas. 25% of the greenhouse gases now are methane. I'm worried that we're not adequately controlling that. That is an unintended negative byproduct. It's something that I think we need to pay some attention to in terms of research and, frankly, regulatory controls.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'll submit a detailed question. Look forward to
yes,
your
sir.
response.
Yes, sir. I'll respond to you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you, Madam
Senator.